But I want to hand the first story off to Daniel Lupker, and it's about this real unfortunate story about an 11-year-old child basically being arrested for not standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance. So Daniel, what is exactly going on, man?
So this is a case that I wanted to bring up. This had to do with an 11-year-old student that was arrested for refusing to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and telling the teacher that the flag is racist and that the national anthem is offensive to black people. Now, what happened, this was at a middle school in Florida, and this child was arrested for not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, in terms of the order of things that happened, this was a substitute teacher, so it's not the regular teacher, who ordered this child to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and he told her that this was not something that he was willing to stand by, and so he did not stand for it. And the teacher told him, well, if it's so bad here, why not go back and live somewhere else, which is, of course, a statement that we hear told to especially black people, African Americans, everywhere, to just go back where you came from if you don't like it here. It seems like the teacher was a refugee from Cuba, so we have different perspectives on that. And kid would not stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, so the teacher called the school and the police, and the child was then arrested for not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. Now, the interesting thing is the school is saying, oh, of course he wasn't arrested for not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. He was arrested because when we asked him to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, which we shouldn't have because it's illegal to do so, he told us that why he wasn't going to do it, and he became belligerent. And then once he became belligerent, we had to call the police on this 11-year-old.
Yeah.
So, but it just so happens that the substitute teacher that did this was let go, is no longer going to be working, and I'm sure they're completely unrelated because the school says that nothing was wrong and it had nothing to do with this teacher breaking the constitutional rights of their students. I'm sure they're completely unrelated. However, Kit, what's your take?
Okay, so here's the thing. Let's not forget the founding of the United States. It was founded by rebellion. It was founded for people standing up for their rights. I mean, this is a story we're all told about brave, patriots standing up and doing the right thing and standing up against a hostile power, right? I mean, that's a story we're always told. And of course, remember what Daniel said. That's really illegal to force someone to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. They have every right to not stand up. And, you know, it's I'm kind of speechless by this, because why are you arresting an 11-year-old for just doing, just for not even standing up? It's pointless, and not to mention it's a waste of police resources. And how dare the school even think about saying, well, he didn't do anything wrong, or we didn't do anything wrong. Well, they did do something wrong. The young man got arrested. That 11-year-old child got arrested.
Yeah, so I want to go to that this child was arrested for resisting arrest without violence. And I really despise any time that you see someone who is put in jail for resisting arrest. What are they resisting? It's a crime that's put in place for not... It's very sketchy. So I'm interested to see if the ACLU is going to pursue this, because the school can the school can say all they want that this had nothing to do with not going for the Pledge of Allegiance, but it's very clear that at the least, even if you give them as much leeway as possible, he was arrested for disagreeing with an unconstitutional request. Mm-hmm. And again, this kid was arrested without violence, which means that he's yelling at them, hey, you can't be doing this. You're abusing my rights. Well, now you're resisting.
Yeah, and the thing is, that's the grounds that they arrested this young man on. Why? I mean, do you understand, like, now there's going to be a lawsuit? I mean, I hope the school realizes that and the police department realizes that as well, because you basically acted out of reason. Now, I understand that a lot of people come to the United States. The American flag means a lot of things, and of course, when some people come here, it really means freedom and everything else. But for others, it's very divisive, and there's a long history of how that flag is seen by many points of views and perspectives. But that's one of the great things about living in a democracy, is that we're allowed to have these perspectives, whether you agree with them or not. And the very fact that the school acted, or this teacher acted out of, I don't know, rage because somebody chose to not stand up for the pledge, really shows how out of touch that teacher is.
Remember, we're a democracy, which means you better stand for the pledge. Now, I think that another angle to this is, obviously, it seems pretty obvious that these schools going to be sued, as...
Oh, it's going to happen. It has
but,
to happen.
But it's like they've already pretty much admitted guilt because they're not working with that substitute anymore, and they're redoing their training to remind them, hey, you can't have kids do something, you can't force them to do something illegally like that. It's their choice to do this or not. So I think that a big point that we want to also go with on this is I want to talk about the school resource management and police in schools. The police are always saying, the NRA is always saying, we need more people with guns in schools to protect us with scary people with guns. Let's go with school shooting. Police have never stopped a school shooting. They just haven't. But they have arrested over 1 million children, including many, many in minority communities. So what school resources, this may be a better conversation than we should have in the comments of, should school resource officers be in schools? What's their track record? They arrest students. We've seen videos in the past where they'll throw students on the ground. What are they really there for except to increase indentured servitude or slavery, depending on how you frame it, in the prison industrial complex? Because as you know, when these kids get thrown in there, they get thrown into juvenile, then that's a record. And that makes it very hard for them to stay in school. It makes it very hard for them to keep up with their schooling because now they've been in jail.
Yeah.
The kid was also suspended for 3 days on top of all this. So they are in prison. They fall behind on their education, which means it's harder for them to make it up. And they have this mark on them, this criminal record that they've now been given, so that when later in life they want to get a job or do other things, apply for colleges, now that's on their record. So for this kid who just didn't want to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance because he clearly had a point of view that, why should I stand for a pledge that doesn't apply to me, that's been used against me, and you arrest him, you're damaging his entire future.
There's one other perspective I want to add on to this before we go to our next story. Here you have a young man who's basically doing his own right to basically refusing to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Well, let's also look at why he was doing it. He was calling it out for past racist actions that have been associated with the American flag, and unfortunately, it's a very sad truth. But let's look at Colin Kaepernick, who was also taking a knee when the Pledge of Allegiance was happening. He wasn't trying to be disrespectful to U.S. troops or the nation itself. He was taking a knee because he was protesting the police brutality and corruption towards minority communities. And how did that turn out for Colin Kaepernick? Well, now the NFL is trying to get him to be back to becoming a player for the NFL. They're working on contracts for him. Not to mention, too, he's been gathering more support. A lot of people are hearing his message.
And he won about an estimated $80 million in a settlement.
So the thing is, it's not taking a knee or refusing to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance isn't being disrespectful. You're actually using your American right to refuse to do that, which is something that all of us have the right to do. But that's in an ideal democracy. Yeah. But unfortunately, the way corporate media and the establishment really portray the American flag, they make it seem like, oh, well, you have to stand up for the pledge now or else.
Yeah, I think that in the end of this story, again, we can comment below with the idea of student resource officers, but I think that the only true un-American thing that happened was that substitute demanding someone stand for the pledge. Yeah. That's the authoritarian thing to do, and it was the most American thing that happened was a student had reasons to not stand for it and exercise those rights.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, did you like that video? Well, hit the subscribe button, hit that bell notification, hit that thumbs up icon, so that way you know when we upload more content to the Heartlands Media YouTube channel. So Daniel, what else can we do to really put everything into this?
Well, we've invested everything we have into this company, so you can help us out by going to our Patreon page and giving us the equivalent of going to Starbucks once a day, which I think is about $50. Please help us out. We want to build more and grow. We will see you in the next video.